In the dead heart of winter 1887, a blood-stained bride stumbled through a blizzard, running from a wedding that ended in murder. What she carried would topple an empire. What she found would save her life. Welcome to a story of survival, secrets, and the strangest salvation two broken people ever found in each other. If you stay with me until the end, you'll see how the coldest night in the Rockies became the beginning of something neither of them expected. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Now, let's go back to that frozen morning when everything changed. The train didn't stop. Caleb Rourke watched it barrel past the platform, a black iron beast shrieking through the mountain pass, and he knew something was wrong. Trains always stopped at Ridgeline Station. Always. Even in weather like this, with snow coming down thick as wool and wind that could strip the skin off a man's face, they stopped. Company policy. Federal regulation. Basic human decency. But not today. The locomotive thundered past, close enough that Caleb felt the heat from its belly, close enough to see the fireman's face in the engine window, eyes forward, jaw set, like he'd been told not to look. The passenger cars followed, windows dark except for one. Just one. And in that brief flash of lamplight, Caleb saw faces. A dozen of them. All men. All watching the platform. All watching her. She stood at the far end of the station, barely visible through the curtain of snow. White dress. No coat. Hair whipping around her shoulders like black snakes. She didn't move when the train passed. Didn't wave, didn't cry out. Just stood there, swaying slightly, like a ghost who'd forgotten she was dead. Caleb had come down from his cabin for supplies. Coffee, mostly. Maybe some tobacco if the station keeper had any worth smoking. He hadn't planned on company. Hadn't wanted it. 15 years in these mountains, and the whole point was to be alone. People brought trouble. People brought questions. People brought the kind of mess he'd spent half his life trying to scrape off his boots. But he couldn't just leave her there. The wind shifted and he caught the smell. Copper and wool. Blood and wet fabric. His gut tightened. He'd smelled that combination before, in places he didn't like remembering. Battlefields, back alleys, rooms where bad things happened to people who couldn't stop them. He started walking. The station platform was a quarter-mile of rotting timber and rusted nails, built 20 years ago when the railroad promised to make Ridgeline into something. That promise died about 6 months after the last spike went in. Now the station was just a shed with delusions, a place where eastbound and westbound trains swapped mail and tried not to think about the bodies buried in the pass. The woman didn't turn when he approached. Up close, he could see she was younger than he'd thought. Mid-20s, maybe. Definitely not old enough for the kind of tired that showed in her posture. Her dress was torn at the shoulder, a long rip that exposed skin too pale, too cold. The fabric was good quality, though. Silk, if he had to guess. The kind of thing you didn't see much in mining country. "Miss?" She blinked, didn't turn. "Miss, you need to get inside." Nothing. Caleb moved around to face her. Her eyes were open but not focused, pupils different sizes. He'd seen that before, too. Shock, probably. Or a blow to the head. Maybe both. Her lips were blue at the edges, and when he looked down, he saw her feet. She was barefoot. "Jesus," he muttered, then caught himself. He'd stopped praying 15 years ago, but the words still came out sometimes. Old habits. Like checking for exits. Like sleeping with one hand on a knife. He shrugged off his coat and wrapped it around her shoulders. She didn't resist. Didn't help either. Just stood there, shivering in little spasms that made her dress shimmer in the weak afternoon light. That's when he saw the blood. Dark streaks across the white silk. Handprints on the bodice. Splatter on the hem. Not hers, he realized. At least not all of it. The blood on her dress was dry. The blood on her feet was fresh. "Can you walk?" Her lips moved. No sound came out. "I'm going to get you inside," Caleb said. "Station keeper's got a stove. We'll warm you up, figure out what's—" "No." Her voice was barely a whisper, but it cut through the wind like a razor. "He'll find me." "Who will?" "All of them." Her eyes finally focused, locking onto his with an intensity that made him take a step back. They were gray, those eyes. Storm cloud gray. The kind of gray that meant trouble. They were on the train. They'll come back. Caleb glanced at the empty tracks. The snow was already covering the rails, erasing proof that anything had passed through. But she was right about one thing. If someone wanted her badly enough to put men on a train, they'd come back. Maybe not today, probably not in this weather, but soon. Why are they looking for you? She opened her mouth, closed it. Her hand went to her chest, pressing against the torn bodice, and Caleb saw something there. A bulge under the fabric. Not natural, something hidden. I can't. She swayed, and he caught her before she went down, light as a bird, lighter than she should be. Under the coat, he felt her ribs through the dress. When was the last time she'd eaten? All right, he said. We're not doing this here. The station keeper's office was locked. That was new. Usually Pete left it open, even when he went up to the main town for drinking money. Caleb tried the door twice, then gave up and kicked it in. The lock was cheap. The frame was cheaper. Inside, the stove was cold, dead cold. No ash, no coals, nothing. Pete hadn't been here in days. Caleb set the woman down in the only chair and got to work. There was kindling in a box by the wall, newspaper from 3 months ago, and a can of kerosene that was probably a fire hazard but would get things started. Within 10 minutes, he had a flame going. Within 20, the room was almost warm. The woman hadn't moved. She sat with her hands in her lap, staring at the floor, shivering less, but still not present. Not really. Caleb had seen men like this after battles. The body there, the mind somewhere else. Usually it passed. Sometimes it didn't. He found a blanket in Pete's back room, scratchy wool that smelled like mouse piss and regret, and wrapped it around her shoulders. She didn't acknowledge it. He checked her feet. Cut up pretty bad, but nothing that wouldn't heal. He found a basin, filled it with snow, set it near the stove to melt. By the time the water was warm, she'd started crying. No sound, just tears running down her face in steady streams, dripping onto the white dress and turning the bloodstains pink. Caleb didn't know what to do with that. Comfort wasn't in his skill set, hadn't been for a long time, so he just kept working. Cleaned her feet, wrapped them in strips torn from an old shirt, found a can of beans in Pete's stash and got them heating on the stove. "What's your name?" he asked, mostly because the silence was getting heavy. "Marina." First time she'd said anything without prompting. He took that as progress. "You got a last name, Marina?" "Bell." Bell. He knew that name. Everybody in the territory knew it. Marcus Bell, the railroad surveyor who'd gone missing 6 months ago. Found dead in a canyon with his neck broken. Company called it an accident. Everyone else called it convenient, since Bell had been making noise about safety violations and worker deaths and other things the Colorado Central didn't want audited. "Marcus Bell, your father?" She nodded. "I'm sorry. Are you?" She looked at him then, really looked, and he saw anger underneath the fear. Good. Anger meant fight. Anger meant she might survive this. "Everyone says they're sorry. Nobody does anything." Caleb stirred the beans. "I'm not everyone." "No." She pulled the blanket tighter. "You're the hermit, the one who lives up in the high country. People talk about you in town. People should mind their business. They say you killed a man. People say a lot of things." "Did you?" Caleb looked at her. Really looked. She didn't flinch, didn't look away. Whatever she'd been through in the last day, week, month, however long, it had burned most of the softness out of her. What was left was bone and gristle and the kind of stubbornness that kept people alive when they should be dead. "Yeah," he said. "I did." "Good." She accepted the beans when he offered them, ate with her hands because there weren't any spoons. "Then you'll understand why I can't go back." "Back where?" "Anywhere Victor Harlan can find me." Caleb went still. Victor Harlan, owner of the Colorado Central Railroad, owner of half the mines in the territory, owner of politicians, judges, sheriffs, and anyone else whose loyalty could be purchased. If Harlan wanted her dead, she had about as much chance as a rabbit in a wolf den. "What did you do to him?" Marina set down the can, reached into her bodice, pulled out a small leather book, maybe 4 inches by 6, bound with a string. The cover was stained, more blood. She held it out to him. "I was supposed to marry his son," she said. "This morning. Big ceremony. Half the territory invited. My father's debts forgiven. My mother's medical bills paid. Everything we needed in exchange for me." Caleb didn't take the book. "That's a bad trade." "I thought I could do it." Her voice was flat now, empty. I thought I could smile and say the words and let him put the ring on and just endure. Women do it all the time, right? Endure. What changed? Thomas showed me this. She shook the book. Victor's son, the one I was supposed to marry. He was drunk the night before the wedding, crying. Said his father was a monster. Said he couldn't live with the things he knew. He gave me this ledger and told me to run. Did you? Not fast enough. She opened the book to a random page. Caleb saw columns of numbers, dates, names. Thomas shot himself in the bridal suite 2 hours before the ceremony. They found him with a gun in his hand and a hole in his head. And Victor, her voice caught. Victor looked at me and said the wedding was postponed, not canceled, that I still owed him, that my father's debts died with Thomas, but mine didn't. Caleb took the book, flipped through it. The handwriting was meticulous, every entry dated, every number double-checked, every name accompanied by notes, payoffs, bribes, accidents that weren't accidents, inspectors who found nothing wrong because they'd been paid to look the other way, workers who complained and disappeared, families who asked questions and stopped asking after a visit from Harlan's men. Marcus Bell's name was in there, cause of death listed as fall. Notes in the margin, ledger recovered, family warned. They killed your father for this, Caleb said. And now they'll kill me. Marina's hands were shaking again. I ran, took the book, took my wedding dress, ran for the station. Got on the first train east. But they were waiting. Harlan's men, a dozen of them. They didn't try to take me in front of the other passengers, just watched. But when we got to Ridgeline, the conductor said everyone had to get off, track work ahead, everyone but me. And then the train kept going. They wanted me alone, wanted me out here where nobody would see. She laughed, sharp and bitter. Lucky for me, the conductor was old-fashioned. Wouldn't throw a woman off a moving train, even for Victor Harlan, so he just left me here instead. Caleb closed the ledger. His mind was working through scenarios, probabilities, outcomes. None of them were good. If Harlan's men had been on that train, they knew she was here. The only question was how long until they came back. In this weather, maybe a day. Maybe 2 if they waited for the storm to pass. Can you ride? A horse? Marina blinked. I've never... Can you hold on to one? I think so. Then we're leaving. Caleb stood, moved to the window. The snow was coming down heavier now, which was bad for travel, but good for covering tracks. If they left now, they might make it to his cabin before dark. Once there, they'd have walls, supplies, and the advantage of high ground. My place is 8 miles north. We get there, we hole up, figure out our next move. What next move? Marina stood too, wobbling slightly. You read the book. You saw the names, sheriffs, marshals, judges. Harlan owns everyone. There's no next move. There's just running until we can't anymore. Maybe. Maybe. She laughed again, and this time it sounded like breaking glass. You think you can fight him? One mountain man against an empire? Caleb looked at her. At the blood on her dress. At the fear in her eyes. At the anger underneath. He thought about Marcus Bell, buried in a canyon with lies carved into his headstone. Thought about Thomas Harlan, dead in a bridal suite because he couldn't live with his father's sins. Thought about all the names in that ledger, all the people who'd been crushed under Victor Harlan's boot and told it was progress. I think, he said slowly, that empires fall when you pull the right stone. You're insane. Probably. He grabbed his coat, then realized she was still wearing it. He found Pete's jacket instead. Too big, smelled worse than the blanket, but it would keep the wind out. But I'm also your best chance at staying alive. So unless you want to wait here for Harlan's men to come back and finish what they started, I suggest you start moving. Marina stared at him. For a long moment, Caleb thought she'd refuse. Thought she'd decide to take her chances alone, or give up entirely, or do any of the 1,000 things people did when they realized they were truly and completely screwed. But then she stood. Wrapped Pete's jacket around herself. Picked up the ledger. If you get me killed, she said, I'm haunting you. Fair enough. Outside, the wind had picked up. The temperature had dropped. The world had turned into a white hell of snow and ice and cold that bit through every layer of clothing. Caleb's horse, a gray gelding named Rust because of the color of his coat and his disposition, stood where he'd left him, tied to a post, looking miserable and judgmental. We're both riding him? Marina shouted over the wind. You got a better idea? She didn't. Caleb helped her up first, then swung up behind her. Russ snorted his disapproval but didn't buck. Good horse. Loyal. Mean when he needed to be. Caleb trusted him more than he trusted most people. They rode north. The trail was barely visible. In summer, it was a clear path through the pines. In winter, it disappeared under snow and guesswork. Caleb knew it by feel more than sight, the way the land rolled, the shape of the trees, the taste of the air. He'd made this ride 1,000 times. Never in weather this bad. Never with a half-frozen woman in a wedding dress pressed against his chest. Marina didn't talk, didn't ask questions, just held on. Her hands gripped the saddle horn so hard her knuckles went white. Every few minutes she shivered, full-body tremors that Caleb felt through his coat. He kept Russ to a walk. Faster was suicide in this visibility. Slower meant they wouldn't make it before dark. An hour into the ride, Marina spoke. "Why are you helping me? Told you. Can't just leave you there." Most people would. Most people are cowards. Or smart. She shifted slightly, trying to find a position that didn't hurt. "This is going to get you killed, you know. When Harlan finds out you helped me, he'll send everyone, every man he owns. They'll burn your cabin, salt your land, make sure nobody ever helps someone run from him again." Caleb guided Rust around a fallen tree. "Then I guess we better make sure he doesn't find out." "How?" "Working on it. You're a terrible liar. Good thing I'm not lying." He pulled Rust to a stop. Something up ahead. Movement. Could be a deer. Could be a person. Couldn't tell through the snow. "Stay quiet." Marina went rigid. Caleb reached down, touched the rifle in his saddle scabbard. Didn't draw it. Not yet. He waited. The shape moved closer, resolved into something four-legged. A wolf, maybe. No. Too big. An elk. Female. She looked at them with dark, unconcerned eyes, then moved on. Just an animal. Just the mountain going about its business. Caleb breathed out. "False alarm," he said, and urged Rust forward. But Marina's hand found his wrist, gripped tight. "What if it's not?" she whispered. "What if they're already out here? What if they followed us?" "They didn't." "How do you know?" "Because we'd be dead already." He said it matter of fact. No drama, just truth. Harlan's men are good at what they do. If they were tracking us, they wouldn't wait. They'd shoot, take the ledger, leave our bodies for the wolves. That's supposed to be comforting? It's supposed to be realistic. He loosened her grip gently. "We're alive because they don't know where we are yet. That's an advantage. We use it." Marina was quiet for another mile. Then, "You really did kill someone." "I did." "Was it in the war?" "No." "After?" "Yeah." "Why?" Caleb thought about lying, thought about deflecting, thought about all the ways he could avoid answering, but something about the way she asked, direct, without judgment, made him tell the truth. "Because he hurt someone I cared about," Caleb said, "and because nobody else was going to stop him." Did it help? Did it bring her back? No. He felt the old weight settle on his shoulders. 15 years hadn't made it lighter. Did it stop him from hurting anyone else? Yeah, so I guess that counts for something. The law didn't care? The law worked for him. Caleb smiled, but there was no humor in it. Kind of like it works for Harlan now. Marina absorbed that. "So you ran." "I left." "What's the difference?" "Running implies fear." "I wasn't afraid. I was just done. Done with towns, done with people, done with the kind of world where men like him get to walk around untouched while everyone else suffers. And now? Now I live on a mountain and don't bother anyone. Except you're bothering Harlan." "Harlan bothered me first," Caleb said. "He put you on my doorstep. That makes it my problem." They rode on. The cabin appeared like a ghost through the snow, a dark shape against white, barely visible until they were almost on top of it. Caleb had built it himself 7 years ago, using timber from the mountainside and nails salvaged from an abandoned mine. It wasn't much. One room, stone fireplace, sleeping loft. But it was solid. It was his. And it was far enough from civilization that most people forgot it existed. He helped Marina down first. She could barely stand. Her legs had gone numb from the cold and the ride. He had to half carry her to the door, get her inside, set her down near the fireplace before she collapsed entirely. "I'll get a fire going," he said. "There's a bed in the loft, blankets. You should—" "I can't feel my feet." Caleb looked down. Blood again. She'd torn open the cuts from before, walking through the snow. Fresh red mixing with old brown on Pete's two big boots. "Right," he said. "Fire first. Feet second." He worked fast. Years of mountain living had made him efficient. Fire lit, water heating, bandages laid out. Marina sat in silence, watching him with those storm-gray eyes, and Caleb tried not to think about how small she looked in his cabin. How out of place. Like a songbird that had wandered into a wolf's den and couldn't figure out how to leave. "This is temporary," he said while wrapping her feet. "Few days, maybe a week. Let the storm pass. Let Harlan's men search the obvious places. Then we figure out how to get you somewhere safe." "Where's safe?" "Working on that too. You work on a lot of things without finishing them." "I finish what matters." He tied off the bandage. "You need to eat something. Real food, not beans from a can." "I'm not hungry." "Don't care. You need strength." He moved to the cabinet, pulled out dried venison, hard bread, a jar of preserves someone had traded him for wolf pelts. Not fancy, but it would keep her alive. "You can hate me for it later. Right now you eat." Marina took the food, ate mechanically, without tasting. When she finished, she looked around the cabin, taking inventory, checking exits. Caleb recognized the behavior. Survival instinct. She was planning, preparing, waiting for the next bad thing. "You can sleep," he said. "I'll keep watch." "I don't sleep anymore." "Since when?" "Since they killed my father." She set down the empty plate. "Every time I close my eyes, I see him. At the bottom of that canyon. They said it was an accident, said he slipped on wet rocks. But I know, I've always known. And now I have proof." She pulled the ledger from inside Pete's jacket. "This is what he died for. These numbers, these names, this evidence of every evil thing Victor Harlan has done." Caleb took the book. "Read it again, more carefully this time." The entries went back years, decades, every crime documented, every sin recorded. It was damning, absolutely damning, and completely useless. "You can't use this," he said. Marina's head snapped up. "What?" "This ledger, it's not enough. It's everything. It's proof. It's a book of numbers that could mean anything." Caleb closed it. No signatures, no witnesses, nothing that directly ties Harlan to any of this. A good lawyer would tear it apart in minutes. Thomas said Thomas was drunk and suicidal, not exactly a reliable source. Caleb saw the pain flash across her face and softened his tone. "I'm not saying it's worthless. I'm saying it's not a weapon. Not yet. We need more." "Like what?" "Witnesses, documents, something that connects Harlan to these crimes in a way he can't deny." Caleb thought about it. "Your father was a surveyor. He must have kept records, maps, reports. The company has all of that. Official records, sure. But what about personal ones? Did he keep notes at home? Correspondence? Anything?" Marina's eyes widened. "His office, in our house. Mother never touched it after he died. Said it felt wrong. Everything's still there." "Then that's where we start." "We can't. The house is in town. Harlan's men will be watching it." "Not in this weather. Not tonight." Caleb stood, moved to the window. The snow was still falling, heavy, relentless, perfect cover. "We go now while they're still looking for you in all the wrong places. Get in, get what we need, get out." "That's insane. Second time you've said that. Because you keep saying insane things." But she was standing too. "My mother will be careful. In and out. She won't even know we were there. She's sick. Her heart. Any shock could. Then we make sure she doesn't see us." Caleb grabbed his rifle, checked the load. 6 rounds. He had more ammunition in his pack. "You know the house. You know where your father kept his work. You lead. I watch your back." "Why are you doing this?" Marina's voice cracked. "You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. Why risk your life for a stranger?" Caleb looked at her, at the blood-stained dress, at the fear and anger and desperate hope all mixed together in her expression. He thought about the woman he'd failed to save 15 years ago. Thought about the man he'd killed because of it. Thought about all the years he'd spent on this mountain alone, trying to forget. Because someone should, he said finally. Someone should stand between people like Harlan and people like you. And if it's not me, then who? Marina stared at him. Then slowly, she nodded. All right, she said. Let's go rob my dead father's office. They left the cabin an hour before midnight. The ride back to town took 3 hours. The storm had eased slightly, but visibility was still terrible. Caleb guided Russ by memory and instinct, following trails that barely existed, avoiding roads where Harlan's men might be watching. Marina rode behind him, silent except for occasional directions. Left at the lightning tree, right where the creek bends, straight until you see the Miller farm. The town of Ridgeline appeared around 2 in the morning. 100 buildings, maybe less, most dark. A few lit. The saloon, the hotel, the sheriff's office. Caleb avoided all of them. He circled around, came in from the east, through the Chinese Quarter where nobody asked questions and everybody minded their business. Marina's house was on a residential street. Nice place. 2 stories. White paint. Picket fence. The kind of house that said respectable family. The kind of house that lied. Back entrance, Marina whispered. Through the garden. Mother's bedroom is upstairs. We need to stay on the ground floor. They tied Russ behind a shed and approached on foot. The snow muffled their steps. The wind covered any sound. Marina led him through a gate, across frozen flower beds, to a door that opened with a key she kept on a string around her neck. Father's office is through here. Inside, the house was dark and cold. No fire in the hearth. No candles lit. Just silence and shadows, and the feeling of a place that had stopped living. They moved through rooms filled with furniture draped in sheets, photographs on walls. A life interrupted. Marina's hand found his in the darkness, squeezed once. Then she let go and moved to a door at the end of the hall. Here, the office was small. Desk, bookshelves, filing cabinets, papers everywhere. Marina lit a small lamp, kept it low, and started searching. Caleb watched the window, watched the street, watched for any sign they'd been seen. Found something, Marina whispered. She held up a folder. Survey reports, the ones he filed with the company. Any notes? Margin comments? Codes? Numbers that don't match the official accounts. She flipped through pages. He was tracking discrepancies, places where the company reported one thing, but the reality was different. Bridge supports that were supposed to be steel but were actually cheap iron. Tunnel reinforcements that never got installed, safety inspections that were faked. Can you prove that? With these reports and the ledger? Maybe. If we can find someone willing to listen. Big if. It's the only if we have. Marina kept searching. More folders. More reports. She was building a case piece by piece, page by page. Evidence that Marcus Bell had died trying to expose. Then Caleb heard it. Footsteps outside. He killed the lamp. Marina froze. They both listened. Boots on wood. Multiple pairs. Coming up the front steps. Stopping at the door. A knock. Hard, aggressive. Mrs. Bell, it's Sheriff Crowley. Need to ask you some questions. Caleb looked at Marina. She was pale, terrified. If they found her here, if they connected her to this house, this evidence, it was over. Upstairs, a voice said from outside. Thought I saw movement. Check it. The door opened. Footsteps in the hall. Coming closer. Caleb grabbed Marina's hand, pulled her to the window. It was stuck. Painted shut. He put his shoulder into it. Wood cracked. The window flew open. Cold air rushed in. In there! Caleb lifted Marina through the window first, dropped her into the snow. She landed hard, but silent. He grabbed the folder she'd been holding, shoved it inside his coat, and followed. Hit the ground running. Behind them, voices, shouts, someone shooting out the window, wild shots, panicked, hitting nothing but snow and darkness. They ran. Through gardens, over fences, down alleys. Caleb led, Marina followed, and behind them the town erupted. Lights coming on, men calling out, dogs barking. Somewhere a bell started ringing. Alarm, alert, hunt. They made it to Rust somehow. Caleb threw Marina into the saddle, swung up behind her, and kicked the horse into motion. Rust bolted. Smart animal. He knew when to run. Behind them, the pursuit began. But Caleb knew these mountains, knew the trails, knew where to go when you needed to disappear. He guided Rust up into the high country, into snow so deep it swallowed tracks, into darkness so complete it swallowed everything else. By the time the sun rose, they were back at the cabin. Marina slid off the horse, collapsed in the snow. Caleb caught her before she went all the way down. "Did we get it?" she asked. "The evidence?" He pulled out the folder, soaked, torn, but intact. "We got it." "Good." She started laughing, couldn't stop, laughter that turned into sobs, sobs that turned into silence. Caleb carried her inside, laid her in the loft, covered her with every blanket he owned. She was asleep before her head hit the pillow. Caleb went back downstairs, built up the fire, spread out the documents to dry, read them while the sun climbed and the snow fell, and somewhere below, in ridgeline, Victor Harlan learned that the bride he thought he'd trapped had slipped through his fingers, and she'd taken his secrets with her. Marina slept for 16 hours straight. Caleb checked on her twice during that first day, once to make sure she was breathing, once to add another blanket when her shivering got bad enough to shake the loft. Both times she didn't wake, just curled tighter into herself, muttering things he couldn't make out. Names, maybe, please, the kind of noise people make when their dreams won't let them rest. He spent the time going through the documents they'd stolen, spreading them across his table in the weak afternoon light, weighing down corners with coffee cups and ammunition boxes. Marcus Bell's handwriting was cramped and precise, every letter formed with the kind of care that came from knowing someone might need to read your work after you were gone. The man had documented everything. Survey measurements that didn't match company reports, material invoices showing lumber and steel that never made it to the actual construction sites, inspection certificates signed by men who'd never set foot on the work zones. The ledger and these reports together painted a clear picture. Harlan had been cutting corners for years, pocketing the difference and paying off anyone who noticed. The Ridgeline Pass project alone showed discrepancies worth thousands, maybe tens of thousands, and that was just one section of track. The problem was proof. These documents showed something was wrong, but they didn't show Harlan doing it. No signatures, no direct orders, just a trail of coincidences that happened to benefit the Colorado Central Railroad and its owner. A good lawyer, and Harlan had the best, would argue incompetence, not malice, clerical errors, contractor fraud, anything but deliberate criminal conspiracy. Caleb needed more. He needed someone inside Harlan's organization willing to talk, or documents with Harlan's actual signature, or witnesses who'd seen the orders given. He needed something he didn't have. The sun was setting when Marina finally came down from the loft. She moved like someone who'd been beaten, slow, careful, testing each step before committing weight. Her hair was a mess. Her face was pale except for the bruises starting to show on her temple and jaw. Someone had hit her before she ran. More than once, from the look of it. "What time is it?" Her voice was rough. Sleep and crying had stripped it raw. "Near evening. You've been out all day." "I never sleep that long." "Your body needed it." Caleb poured coffee from the pot he'd kept warm, handed it to her. "How do you feel?" "Like I got dragged behind a horse." She took the cup, sipped, made a face. "This is terrible. It's coffee. It's mud. Drink it anyway." She did. Stood there in the middle of his cabin wearing one of his shirts because her wedding dress was ruined beyond saving, holding a cup of bad coffee, looking at the papers spread across his table. Her expression didn't change, but something in her posture shifted, straightened, like she was bracing for impact. "Did you find anything useful?" "Depends on your definition of useful." Caleb moved to the table, pointed at specific pages. "Your father was thorough, documented every discrepancy he could find, but documentation isn't proof, not the kind that holds up when the man you're accusing owns half the judges in the territory." Marina set down her coffee, picked up one of the reports, read it with the same careful attention her father must have used writing it. When she finished, she picked up another, then another, working through the stack methodically, building the picture in her mind. "He knew," she said finally. "He knew Harlan was going to kill him." "What makes you say that?" "These dates." She tapped a page. "He filed the last official report 3 weeks before he died. But these personal notes, The ones documenting the discrepancies, they go right up to the day before. He was still gathering evidence, still preparing, like he knew he needed an insurance policy. Didn't help him. No. She set down the papers. But maybe it can help us. How? Marina looked at him, those gray eyes sharp now, focused. Thomas said his father kept 2 sets of books, one for the investors and regulators, one for himself. The real one, the one that shows where all the money actually went. And you think we can find it? I think if we can get into Harlan's private office, we might have a chance. Caleb laughed, couldn't help it. You want to break into Victor Harlan's office, in his house, in the middle of town, while every man he employs is looking for you? Yes, that's suicide. So is sitting here waiting for them to find us. Marina crossed her arms. You said we needed proof, real proof. That's where it is. You don't know that. Thomas told me. The night before the wedding. He was drunk enough to tell the truth and sober enough to mean it. He said his father kept everything, every crime, every payoff, every dirty secret, all in one place. Because Victor Harlan is the kind of man who needs to look at his victories and know they're real. Caleb studied her. Thomas tell you where in the office? A safe. Behind a painting of the railroad's founding. Combination is Victor's birth date reversed. How did Thomas know the combination? Because he was the eldest son. Victor was training him to take over the empire. That included access to the empire's secrets. Marina's voice went flat. Thomas couldn't live with what he saw. So he gave me the information and put a gun to his head. And I ran. And now he's dead and I'm here and we have a chance to make it mean something. Or we die trying. We're dead anyway if we do nothing. She picked up her coffee again, drank it down despite the taste. At least this way we fight back. Caleb wanted to argue, wanted to tell her it was impossible, that there were too many variables, that walking into Harlan's house was walking into a grave. But he looked at the papers on his table, looked at the evidence Marcus Bell had died trying to expose, looked at Marina standing in his cabin wearing his shirt and her father's determination, and he realized he'd already made his choice. Back in that station, when he'd wrapped his coat around a stranger's shoulders. That's when he'd chosen. Everything since was just follow-through. We'd need a plan, he said. Marina smiled, first time he'd seen it. It didn't reach her eyes. Then let's make one. They spent the next day preparing. Caleb went through his supplies, taking inventory of what they had and what they'd need. Rope, dark clothing, a second knife. His rifle was too conspicuous for close work in town, but his revolver would do. 6 shots. He checked the action, cleaned the mechanism, loaded fresh rounds. Marina worked on the plan. She knew Harlan's house, had been there dozens of times for dinners and parties and all the social performances that came with being engaged to the heir. She drew a rough map on the back of one of her father's survey sheets, marking entrances, exits, guard positions, the location of Victor's study. 3 guards minimum, she said, sketching. 1 at the front gate, 1 at the back entrance, 1 roaming the grounds. More inside probably, but I never saw them. What about servants? Housekeeper sleeps in the east wing. Cook lives in town. Victor has a valet, but he's discreet, stays in his quarters unless called. And Harlan himself? Office until midnight most nights, then his bedroom on the 2nd floor. Marina marked both locations. If we go late enough, he'll be asleep. If. It's the best we can do. Caleb looked at the map, at the walls she'd drawn, at the distances between entry points in the study. It was doable. Barely. If everything went right, if the guards stuck to their patterns, if Harlan kept to his schedule, if nobody raised an alarm, too many ifs. But that's how these things went. You made a plan, and then the plan fell apart, and then you improvised or died. We'll need a diversion, he said. Something to pull the guards away from the house. Like what? Fireworks well. People panic, run toward it or away from it. Either way, they're not paying attention to what they should be. Marina frowned. You want to burn down part of town? Just a building. Empty one. Something that makes noise but doesn't hurt anyone. That's still arson. You have a better idea? She didn't. They both knew it. You didn't rob the most powerful man in the territory by asking politely. What about after? Marina asked. Say we get in. Say we get the books. How do we get out? How do we get the evidence to someone who'll use it? Federal Marshal. There's one in Denver. Name's Clayton Ward, former Army. Honest or as honest as they come. He'll listen. Denver's 3 days' ride. We'd never make it. We don't ride. We use the telegraph. Caleb pointed to a spot on her map. There's a relay station 2 miles north of town. Small place. One operator. We get there, send a message to Ward. He sends men to collect the evidence and lock down Harlan before anyone can disappear the books. You think Ward will believe a telegraph message? I think if the message says Victor Harlan is running a criminal conspiracy and we have proof, he'll at least send someone to check. That's all we need. Eyes on the evidence. Once the federal government knows, Harlan can't make it disappear. Marina traced the route on the map. House to relay station. 2 miles through town and open country. With Harlan's men hunting them. With the evidence that could destroy an empire. We'll need horses, she said. I've got Rust. 1 horse for 2 people running from a dozen armed men. That's not enough. Then we steal another. From where? Harlan's stable. If we're already in his house, might as well take his transportation. Marina laughed, sharp and bitter. You're going to rob him, break into his office, steal his secrets, and then steal his horse on the way out. Seems efficient. Seems insane. You keep using that word because you keep earning it. But she was smiling again. Still didn't reach her eyes, but it was there. When do we go? Tomorrow night, late. The longer we wait, the more time Harlan has to find us. But we go too soon. We walk into a trap. Caleb folded the map. We get 1 shot at this. We make it count. The rest of the day passed in tense silence. Caleb cleaned weapons, checked his gear, tried not to think about all the ways this could go wrong. Marina read through her father's documents again, memorizing details, building arguments in her head for when they finally got the evidence to someone who mattered. Evening came. They ate venison and beans and hard bread. Not celebration food, but it filled the space. After, Marina went to the window, stared out at the snow-covered mountains turning purple in the dying light. My father loved this view, she said quietly. Used to say the mountains were honest. They'd kill you if you weren't careful, but at least they'd do it openly. Not like men. Men killed you and called it business. Caleb joined her at the window. He sounds like he was smart. He was. Too smart for his own good. She touched the glass. My mother begged him to stop, to let it go, to just take the money Harlan offered and forget what he knew. She said some fights aren't worth dying for. What did he say? He said if nobody fights, everybody loses. Marina's voice cracked. And then he went to that canyon, and they killed him and called it an accident, and my mother's heart broke, and I agreed to marry a man I didn't love because I thought it would fix everything, thought I could sacrifice myself and make it right. You can't fix what's already broken. No. She turned to face him. But maybe you can break it worse. Break it so bad it has to be rebuilt. Tear down the whole rotten structure and see what grows in its place. That's a dangerous philosophy. I'm past caring about danger. Marina moved away from the window. Thomas is dead. My father's dead. Harlan thinks he can take everything from me, and I'll just accept it. But he's wrong. I'm not accepting anything. I'm taking everything from him instead. The next night they left the cabin under a moonless sky. The storm had passed, but the cold remained, sharp and bitter. The kind of cold that found every gap in your clothing and reminded you that this land didn't care whether you lived or died. They rode double on Rust, moving slow through the darkness, following game trails and frozen creek beds. Marina had changed into clothes Caleb had cobbled together from his own gear. Trousers too long, shirt too wide, coat that swallowed her whole. She looked like a child playing dress-up. But she sat straight in the saddle, rifle across her lap, eyes scanning the darkness. You know how to use that? Caleb asked, nodding at the weapon. Point and shoot. It's more complicated than that. Then I'll figure it out when I need to. They reached the outskirts of Ridgeline around 11. The town was quiet, most buildings dark, a few lights in windows, smoke from chimneys. Normal life, continuing despite everything, despite murder and conspiracy and a young woman running for her life. Caleb left Rust tied in a grove of trees half a mile out. They'd come back for him later, or they wouldn't. Either way, the horse would find his way home. They moved toward town on foot. The building Caleb had chosen for the diversion was an old warehouse at the south end of town. empty for years. Nobody used it, nobody would miss it, and it was positioned perfectly, close enough to Harlan's estate to pull attention, far enough away that the fire wouldn't spread. Marina kept watch while Caleb worked. He'd brought kerosene and rags. Nothing fancy, just fire waiting to happen. He doused the interior, trailing fuel from room to room, making sure it would catch fast and burn hot. Then he led the trail outside 20 feet from the building and stopped. "When I light this, we have maybe 10 minutes before the alarm goes up," he said. "After that, every eye in town will be on this fire. That's when we move." Marina nodded. Her face was pale but steady. "I'm ready." Caleb struck a match, dropped it on the fuel trail. Fire leapt up like a living thing, racing toward the warehouse, hungry and bright. By the time it reached the building, Caleb and Marina were already moving. They cut through alleys and backyards, staying low, staying quiet. Behind them, voices started shouting, bells ringing, the volunteer fire brigade stumbling out of saloons and homes, pulling on coats, running toward the flames. Harlan's estate sat on a hill at the north edge of town. 3 stories. Stone and timber, surrounded by a fence that said "keep out" in every language that mattered. Caleb and Marina approached from the east, where the fence met a stand of trees. The guard Marina had marked as roaming was gone, pulled toward the fire like everyone else. They climbed the fence, dropped into the garden, moved toward the house like shadows. The back entrance was locked, but not bolted. Caleb worked the mechanism with a bent piece of wire. Took 40 seconds. Felt like 40 minutes. Then the lock clicked and the door opened and they were inside. Dark. Silent. The house asleep. Marina led. She knew the layout. Through the kitchen, past the servant quarters, down a hallway lined with paintings of men in expensive clothes looking important. At the end, a door, solid oak, locked. Caleb worked on this one too. Harder lock. Better craftsmanship. He felt the tumblers shift, reset, shift again. His hands were sweating despite the cold. If someone came now, if a servant woke, if a guard returned, they were trapped. The lock gave. They slipped inside. Caleb closed the door behind them. Marina moved to the window, pulled the curtains tight, then risked a small light. A candle. Just enough to see by. The study was exactly what you'd expect from a man like Harlan. Expensive desk, leather chairs, bookshelves full of volumes nobody read, and on the wall behind the desk, a painting. 4 men in suits shaking hands in front of a locomotive. The railroad's founding, just like Thomas had said. Marina went to the painting, lifted it carefully. Behind, set into the wall, a safe. Black iron. Combination lock. "Birth date reversed," Marina whispered. She spun the dial. Right, left, right. Numbers Caleb couldn't see. The safe clicked. The door swung open. Inside, ledgers, 3 of them. Thick leather-bound volumes. Marina pulled out the first one, opened it. Her hand started shaking. "This is it," she breathed. "This is everything. Payments, bribes, every politician he owns, every law he's broken, every person he's—" She stopped, stared at a page. "Oh no." "What?" "My father's name, and my mother's, and mine." She looked up at Caleb. "He's been planning this for years. The marriage wasn't just about covering up my father's investigation. It was about acquiring his assets, taking everything we owned legally. The debts he forgave weren't kindness, they were leverage. And when my father died, we owed him even more. That's over now. We have the books. We have to get out." Marina grabbed all 3 ledgers. "If someone finds us here," footsteps in the hallway. They both froze. The footsteps stopped outside the study door. A pause. Then a voice. "Mr. Harlan? You working late again?" The valet. "Come to check on his employer." Caleb blew out the candle. Darkness swallowed them. The door handle turned. Light spilled in from the hallway. The valet stepped inside, carrying a lamp. "Mr. Harlan?" Caleb moved. Fast. Quiet. Came up behind the man and put him in a chokehold. Not hard enough to kill, just hard enough to sleep. The valet struggled for 5 seconds, then went limp. Caleb lowered him to the floor. Marina was already at the window, working the latch. It wouldn't budge. "Painted shut," she hissed. "Break it." The noise, better than getting caught. Caleb grabbed a chair, swung it at the window. Glass exploded. Cold air rushed in. Somewhere in the house, someone shouted. They went through this window, dropped into the garden, landed wrong. Caleb felt something twist in his ankle. Pain shot up his leg, but he pushed through it. Had to. No time for injury. Lights coming on in the house. More voices. Then a gunshot. Wild. High. Not aimed at them. Just alarm. They ran. Through the garden. Over the fence. Into the streets of Ridgeline. Behind them, the alarm spread. Men pouring out of Harlan's house. Dogs barking. More shots. These ones closer. The horses, Marina gasped. Forget the horses. We go to the relay station on foot. That's 2 miles. Then we better run fast. They did. Through town. Past the fire. Still burning, but under control now. Past people who stared. Past shops and homes and the church where Marina was supposed to have been married. Every step hurt. Caleb's ankles screaming, Marina's lungs burning, the ledgers heavy in her arms. Behind them, pursuit. Horses now. Men who knew these streets better than they did. They reached the edge of town. Open ground ahead. The relay station visible in the distance. A small building with a light in the window. So close. Quarter mile. Maybe less. A rider cut them off. Sheriff Dane Crowley sat on a black gelding, rifle across his saddle. 2 deputies flanked him. All 3 had weapons drawn. That's far enough, Crowley said. Caleb and Marina stopped. No choice. 3 guns versus none. Bad odds getting worse. Drop the books, Miss Bell. No. Marina clutched them tighter. Drop them or I shoot your friend. Shoot him and I burn these before you can reach me. Crowley smiled. You won't. You sure about that, Sheriff? Marina's voice was steady now, clear. Because I've lost everything already. My father, my future, my life. What's one more fire? The sheriff's smile faded. He looked at Caleb. Talk sense into her. I've been trying, Caleb said. Doesn't seem to work. Then you're both fools. Crowley raised his rifle. Mr. Harlan wants those ledgers. He's willing to pay for them. Good money. Enough to set you both up somewhere far from here. You can live, be comfortable. Forget any of this happened. How much did he pay you to forget my father? Marina asked quietly. Crowley didn't answer. How much for Thomas? For all the workers who died in unsafe tunnels? For every family he destroyed? Her voice rose. How much does it cost to buy a soul, Sheriff? Because clearly you know the price. Careful, girl. Or what? You'll kill me? Do it. Pull the trigger. Add my name to the list of people Victor Harlan made disappear. See if it helps you sleep. Marina took a step forward. But these books survive, even if I don't. They get to the relay station. They get to the federal marshal, and your name is in here too, Sheriff. Every payment, every crime you helped cover up. So when you shoot me, you're shooting yourself. Crowley's hand tightened on the rifle. For a long moment, nobody moved. The standoff held. 3 armed men, 2 refugees, ledgers full of secrets, all balanced on the edge of violence. Then a gunshot cracked the night. But it didn't come from Crowley. It came from behind Crowley, from the darkness between buildings. One of the deputies jerked sideways, hit the ground hard. His horse screamed and bolted. The other deputy wheeled around, rifle up, searching for the shooter. Another shot. The second deputy's hat flew off his head. He ducked, nearly fell from his saddle, then spurred his horse and ran. Just ran. Disappeared into the night like he'd never been there. Crowley sat frozen, caught between fight and flight. His rifle still pointed at Marina, but his head was turned, trying to see the threat. Caleb didn't give him time to choose. He lunged forward, grabbed the rifle barrel, yanked hard. Crowley pulled the trigger, but the shot went wide, just noise and flash. Then Caleb had him by the coat, dragging him off the horse. They hit the ground together. Crowley was bigger, heavier, but Caleb had momentum and 15 years of mountain living that made him harder than furniture. He got on top, pinned the sheriff's gun arm, drove a fist into his face. Once. Twice. Felt cartilage crunch. Crowley bucked, threw him off. They both scrambled to their feet. The sheriff's nose was bleeding, lips split. He came in swinging, caught Caleb in the ribs. Air exploded from his lungs. Another punch, this one to the jaw. Caleb's vision sparked. He fell back. Crowley followed. Big mistake. Caleb caught the next punch, twisted the arm, used the sheriff's weight against him. They went down again. This time Caleb got his forearm across Crowley's throat, pressed. The sheriff thrashed, clawed at Caleb's face, couldn't breathe, couldn't break free. "Stop!" Marina's voice cut through the struggle. "Both of you stop!" Caleb looked up. She was holding Crowley's rifle, had it pointed at both of them. Her hands were shaking, but her finger was on the trigger. "Let him go," she said. Caleb released the pressure. Crowley gasped, sucked in air, coughed blood. Caleb rolled off him, got to his feet. His ribs hurt, his jaw hurt, everything hurt. "Stay down," Marina told the sheriff. The rifle didn't waver. "I don't want to shoot you, but I will." Crowley stayed down, held his throat with one hand, looked at her with eyes that were already swelling shut. "You're making a mistake. That's my choice to make. Harlan will kill you both. You know that. Doesn't matter where you run. He'll find you." "Maybe?" Marina stepped closer. "But he'll have to explain why first, in court, in front of a judge, with these ledgers as evidence. Your name's in here, Sheriff. Every dirty dollar, every lie you told, every person you let him destroy. When this gets out, you'll be lucky if hanging is all you get." Crowley spat blood. "Nobody's going to believe a runaway bride and a hermit. They'll believe the federal marshal." Marina nodded toward the relay station. "That's where we're going, to send a message to Denver, to tell them what Victor Harlan really is. And when they come, and they will come, you'll be here, still bleeding, still guilty, still working for a man who's about to lose everything. The marshal won't help you. He will if the alternative is letting a railroad baron get away with murder." Footsteps behind them. Caleb spun, fists up. But it wasn't more deputies. It was a woman, older, maybe 60, wearing a coat over a nightdress, carrying a hunting rifle like she knew how to use it. "You two need to move," she said. "More riders coming from town. I can hear them." Caleb stared. "Who?" "Name's Ruth Kimball. I run the general store. Knew your father, Miss Bell." She looked at Marina. "Good man. Didn't deserve what happened. Now get moving before Harlan's dogs show up." "You shot the deputies," Marina said. "Scared them off. Didn't shoot anyone." Ruth worked the rifle bolt, ejecting a spent shell. "Though I was tempted, Dane Crowley's been dirty since the day he pinned on that badge. Somebody should have dealt with him years ago." "You helped us. Why?" "Because I'm tired of watching bad men win." Ruth pointed toward the relay station. "Go. Send your message. I'll make sure the sheriff stays put." Caleb grabbed the ledgers from where Marina had dropped them. They were heavier than they looked, dense with paper and secrets. He could feel the weight of every crime documented inside, every life ruined, every dollar stolen. This wasn't just evidence. It was ammunition. "Thank you," Marina told Ruth. "Don't thank me. Just make it count." They ran. The relay station sat alone on a small rise, a one-room building with a telegraph key and an operator who'd rather be anywhere else. They burst through the door without knocking. The operator, a thin man with wire-frame glasses and the look of someone who'd stopped being surprised by life, glanced up from his newspaper. "We're closed." "No, you're not." Caleb dropped the ledgers on the desk. "You're going to send a message to Denver, to Marshal Clayton Ward. Right now. I don't take orders from—" Caleb pulled out his revolver. Didn't point it at the man, just set it on the desk next to the ledgers. Let the implication speak for itself. The operator looked at the gun, looked at Caleb, looked at Marina, still holding Crowley's rifle. His expression didn't change much, just adjusted from mild annoyance to weary resignation. "What's the message?" Marina stepped forward, dictated while the operator wrote. Evidence of criminal conspiracy. Victor Harlan. Colorado Central Railroad. Multiple murders including Marcus Bell and Thomas Harlan. Bribery of public officials. Falsified safety reports. Theft. Fraud. Ledgers containing documented proof ready for immediate transfer to federal custody. "That it?" the operator asked. "Add that we're in Ridgeline, that we need protection, that if anything happens to us, the evidence goes public." The operator started tapping. The key clicked. Dots and dashes. The language of wires and electricity. Words turned to code, sent flying through copper across hundreds of miles to Denver. To a man Caleb hoped was honest. Hoped would listen. Hoped would do something before Harlan buried them in the same unmarked grave as Marcus Bell. The transmission took 4 minutes. Felt like 4 hours. Caleb watched the door, watched the window, listened for horses, for voices, for the sound of pursuit catching up. "Sent," the operator said. "Response will take a while, if he's even at his office." "How long?" "Could be an hour, could be morning." He pushed his glasses up. "You planning to wait here?" "Do we have a choice?" "You could run, leave the ledgers, save yourselves." Marina laughed, sharp, humorless. "We're not leaving the evidence." "Then you better hope your marshal checks his telegraph tonight." The operator went back to his newspaper. "Because if Harlan gets here first, being right won't save you." Caleb moved to the window, looked out at Ridgeline. The town was lit up now. Every window, every street. He could see riders moving through, searching, methodical, professional. These weren't drunks with badges. These were Harlan's private men, the kind who got paid to solve problems permanently. "How many you think he's got?" Marina asked. She'd moved beside him, close enough that he could hear her breathing, quick, shallow, scared, but not broken. "Looking for us? Maybe 20. Maybe more. We can't fight 20 men." "No." Caleb checked his revolver. Still 6 rounds. "But we can make them work for it." "You talk like we're already dead." "We might be. Depends on how fast the marshal moves." He looked at her. "You scared?" "Terrified." "Good. Scared keeps you alive. Or it makes you freeze at the wrong moment." "You won't freeze." Caleb had seen her face down Sheriff Crowley with a rifle she barely knew how to hold. Had watched her climb through a window after robbing the most dangerous man in the territory. Whatever fear she felt, she wasn't letting it control her. "You're your father's daughter. You'll do what needs doing." Marina touched the ledgers. "He died for these. Thomas died because of them. How many more before it's enough?" "However many it takes." "That's a terrible answer." "It's the only one I've got." The telegraph keys started clicking. Both of them turned. The operator looked up, surprised. Started writing. Dots became dashes, became letters, became words. When he finished, he tore off the paper, handed it to Caleb. "Your marshal." Caleb read. "Message received. Evidence accepted. Federal custody arranged. Hold position. Agents en route. ETA 4 hours. 4 hours. 240 minutes. Enough time for Harlan to find them. To kill them. To burn the evidence and disappear the bodies and pretend none of this ever happened. "Can you defend this building?" Marina asked. "Against 20 men? For 4 hours?" Caleb shook his head. "No, but I know a place we can." "Where?" "My cabin. It's defensible. High ground, limited approaches. They want us. They have to come uphill through snow. That gives us advantage. It's 8 miles from here. We'd never make it on foot. Then we find horses." "Where? Harlan's men are everywhere," Caleb thought. Considered options. Discarded most of them. Then he looked at the operator. "You have a horse?" "In the stable out back. Old mare. Barely rides anymore." "She'll have to do." Caleb grabbed the ledgers. "We need to leave. Now. Before they close the net." The operator stood. "Wait. If they come here looking for you and you're gone, they'll know I helped. They'll kill me. So come with us." "To your cabin? To wait for a war? Or stay here and die when Harlan's men arrive looking for answers?" Caleb moved to the door. "Your choice. But make it fast." The operator looked at his newspaper, at his comfortable chair, at the life he'd built being invisible and safe. Then he looked at the ledgers, at the evidence of everything Victor Harlan had done, at the chance to finally do something that mattered. "I'll get the horse," he said. They left through the back. The mare was exactly as advertised, old, tired, confused about why anyone wanted her to move at night. But she walked. That was enough. Caleb took point on foot, leading. Marina rode the mare, the ledger strapped to the saddle. The operator followed, carrying his own rifle and a bag of supplies he'd grabbed from the station. "What's your name?" Marina asked him. "Fletcher. Henry Fletcher." "Thank you for helping us, Mr. Fletcher." "Don't thank me yet. We're not safe." They weren't. Caleb could hear riders in the distance, voices calling to each other, organizing. Harlan would have the whole town locked down by now, every road watched, every exit covered. The only reason they'd made it this far was luck and darkness. Both would run out eventually. They moved north, away from town, into the foothills. The going was slow. The mare kept wanting to stop. Fletcher wasn't used to walking in snow. Marina sat silent, watching the shadows. Every sound made them freeze. Every movement could be pursuit. An hour passed, then two. The terrain got rougher, steeper, the kind of country where horses had to pick their steps and people had to trust their footing. Behind them, ridgeline disappeared into the darkness. Ahead, somewhere in the mountains, Caleb's cabin waited. "We're not going to make it," Fletcher said. He was breathing hard, limping. "They'll catch us before dawn." "They haven't yet." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one that matters." Caleb helped him over a fallen log. "We keep moving until we can't. Then we make a stand. Against professional killers. Against men. Just men. They bleed same as anyone." "Do you really believe that? Or are you just saying it to keep us moving?" Caleb didn't answer, because he didn't know. He'd been in fights before. In the war. After. He knew how it went. Chaos and noise and people dying for reasons that stopped making sense the moment the shooting started. You didn't win those fights by being better. You won by being lucky, by being mean, by refusing to quit even when every smart part of your brain said to run. He'd gotten lucky before. Might again. Or might not. Either way, stopping wasn't an option. They reached the cabin 3 hours before dawn. Caleb had never been so happy to see those rough timber walls. He got Marina and Fletcher inside, started a fire, checked their supplies. Ammunition, food, water. Enough for a day. Maybe 2 if they rationed. Not enough for a siege. "Barricade the door," he told Fletcher. "Use whatever's heavy. Furniture, firewood, anything that'll slow them down." "What about the windows?" "Too small to climb through, but they can shoot through them. Stay low. Stay away from the walls." Marina was at the loft ladder. "I'll take the high position. Better angle." "You ever shot from elevation?" "I'll figure it out." She climbed, took Crowley's rifle with her, left the ledgers on the table, evidence that had cost so many lives. That might cost more before this ended. Caleb went to each window, looked out, scanned the approaches. The cabin sat on a rise with thick forest on 3 sides and open ground to the south. Anyone coming would have to cross that ground or fight through the trees. Either way, they'd be exposed, visible. Targets. "How long until they find us?" Fletcher asked. He was piling wood against the door. Looked like he was building a dam against a flood. Maybe he was. "Couple hours. Maybe less if they're smart. What if the marshal doesn't come?" "He'll come." "How do you know?" "Because he's the kind of man who keeps his word." Caleb checked his revolver again. 6 shots. He had maybe 30 more rounds in his pack. "Or I'm wrong and we die. Either way, we'll know soon." Marina called down from the loft. "Movement. South edge. 3 riders." Caleb moved to the window. Saw them. Dark shapes against snow. Moving slow. Careful. Searching. "They're scouting," he said, "looking for tracks. When they find them, the rest will come." "How many in the rest?" "All of them." Fletcher stopped piling wood. "We should run. Out the back. Into the forest. We could hide. Wait them out." "In this cold? Without supplies?" Caleb shook his head. "We'd freeze before morning." "Better than getting shot." "Maybe. Maybe not." He looked up at Marina. "You ready?" "No." Her voice was steady anyway. "Do it anyway?" "That's the idea." The scouts found their trail 10 minutes later. One of them dismounted, knelt in the snow, studied the tracks, pointed toward the cabin. They'd been found. The riders withdrew, disappeared into the trees. Caleb knew what came next. They'd report back to Harlan. He'd send everyone. Surround the cabin. Offer terms. When those were refused, and they would be refused, he'd order the attack. "How much time do we have, Marina?" Marina asked. "Maybe an hour, maybe less." "And the marshal?" Caleb looked at the sky. Still dark. False dawn, maybe an hour away. Sunrise after that. The marshal had said 4 hours. They'd use 3 getting to the cabin. That left 1. 60 minutes. Between them and help. Between them and death. "He'll make it," Caleb said. Didn't sound convincing even to himself. They waited. Fletcher paced. Marina watched from the loft. Caleb sat at the table with the ledgers spread open, reading, memorizing. If they didn't survive this, someone needed to know what was in these books, what Victor Harlan had done. The names, the crimes, the proof. Marcus Bell had documented everything. Every bribe to every official, every worker who died in tunnels that should never have been built. Every family paid off to stay quiet. Every inspector who looked the other way. Page after page of systematic corruption. Of an empire built on bodies and blood money. Thomas Harlan's name was in there too, listed as an intermediary, a go-between. The son learning his father's business. But the notes in the margins told a different story. Questions, doubts, places where Thomas had written things like, "Is this legal?" and "What about their families?" A conscience developing too late. No wonder he'd shot himself. Some things you couldn't live with once you knew them. "They're coming." Marina's voice from the loft. Caleb moved to the window. Saw them. Not 3 riders anymore. Dozens. Coming out of the trees like wolves, spreading out, surrounding the cabin, professional, organized, men who'd done this before. At the center, on a black horse, Victor Harlan himself. He was older than Caleb expected. 60, maybe. Gray hair. Expensive coat. The kind of man who looked respectable until you saw his eyes. Cold. Calculating. Eyes that saw people as numbers in a ledger. Assets to be used, liabilities to be eliminated. Harlan raised a hand. His men stopped, formed a loose circle around the cabin. Maybe 30 of them. All armed, all watching. All Miss Bell. Harlan's voice carried across the snow. Refined, educated. The voice of a man used to being obeyed. "I know you're in there, you and your friend, and my property." Caleb moved to the door, opened it a crack, just enough to shout through. "She's not your property. The ledgers are. Stolen from my office. I want them back." "Come and get them." Harlan smiled, didn't reach his eyes. "I'm trying to be civilized about this. You're both in over your heads. You've stolen sensitive business documents, assaulted my staff, burned my warehouse. But I'm willing to overlook all of that if you return what belongs to me." "What about Marcus Bell?" Marina's voice from above. "You willing to overlook murdering him too? Your father's death was an accident, tragic, but an accident. You're a liar, and you're a thief." Harlan's tone hardened. "I'm offering you a chance to walk away, both of you. Return the ledgers and disappear. I'll even pay for your travel, enough to start over somewhere far from here." "We're not leaving." "Then you're fools." Harlan looked at his men, back at the cabin. "You're outnumbered, outgunned. The nearest help is hours away. You can't win this." "We don't have to win," Caleb called back. "We just have to survive long enough for the federal marshal to arrive." That got a reaction. Harlan's expression flickered. Surprise, concern. Quickly masked, but there. He knew about the telegraph. Had probably assumed they'd destroyed it. Learning they'd actually sent a message changed the equation. "The marshal won't help you," Harlan said. But his voice was less certain now. "He works for the federal government. The federal government works with me. You think a simple telegraph message changes that?" "I think evidence of murder and fraud changes everything." Marina appeared at the loft window, visible, defiant. "And that evidence is going to Denver whether you like it or not." "Over your dead body." "If that's what it takes." Harlan stared at her, at the daughter of the man he'd killed, at the bride who'd escaped his control, at the witness who could destroy everything he'd built. For a moment, something like regret crossed his face. Then it was gone, replaced by cold calculation. "Burn them out," he said. His men moved. 4 men broke from the group. They carried torches, rags soaked in kerosene wrapped around branches, fire bright enough to hurt the eyes. They moved toward the cabin from different angles, smart, spreading the threat, making it impossible to watch all of them at once. "Pick your targets," Caleb told Marina. "Don't waste shots." "Which one do I aim for?" "Closest one, the one who's going to reach us first." Marina's rifle cracked. The sound was too loud in the confined space. The bullet hit snow 3 feet from the nearest man. He didn't even flinch, just kept coming. "You're high," Caleb said. "Breathe out, Squeeze, don't pull. She fired again. This time the man stumbled, dropped his torch, grabbed his leg, and went down screaming. The torch landed in the snow, hissed, went out. Good, Caleb said. Next one. But the other three had reached the cabin. One threw his torch onto the roof. It caught immediately. Dry timber. 7 years of mountain weather. The whole thing was a tinderbox waiting to happen. Flames spread across the shingles. Smoke started pouring through gaps in the ceiling. Another man threw his torch through the window. It shattered glass. Landed on Caleb's bed. The blankets ignited. Fire climbed the walls. The third man tried for the door. Fletcher shot him, point blank through a gap in the barricade. The man fell backwards. Didn't get up. We can't stay here, Fletcher shouted over the roar of flames. The whole place is going up. The ledgers, Marina started. Grab them, Caleb ordered. Everything you can carry, we're leaving. To go where? Out the back, into the forest. Make them work for it. He was already moving, throwing gear into a pack, ammunition, food, a blanket. Not much, just enough to maybe survive a night in the cold. Fletcher helped Marina down from the loft. She had the ledgers wrapped in her coat. Her face was black with smoke, eyes streaming. The back wall was burning now, flames eating through the logs. Heat like standing next to a forge. Caleb found a weak spot, kicked it, once, twice. The third time his boot went through. He kicked again, made a hole big enough for a person. Go, he told Marina. Fletcher, you next. I'll cover. You'll die. Probably not today. He pushed her toward the hole. Move. She went through. Fletcher followed. Caleb grabbed the pack. Took one last look at the cabin he'd built with his own hands. 7 years of solitude going up in smoke. All because he'd helped a stranger at a train station. Worth it, he decided. Then he went through the hole. Outside was chaos. The cabin was fully engulfed now, flames shooting 30 feet into the air, smoke thick enough to choke on. Harlan's men were shouting, some backing away from the heat, some moving forward to make sure nobody escaped. Caleb hit the ground running. Marina and Fletcher were already 20 yards into the trees. He followed. Behind him, someone yelled, spotted them. Gunfire erupted, bullets smacking into trees, into snow. One passed so close to Caleb's head he felt the wind. He didn't stop, just ran. The forest was thick, pine and aspen. Deadfall everywhere. Snow knee-deep in places. Marina was struggling, the ledgers weighing her down, her breath coming in gasps. Fletcher was worse, older, softer, not built for running through mountains in the middle of the night. Keep moving, Caleb urged. Don't stop. Can't. Fletcher stumbled, went down, got up, kept going. Can't breathe. You die if you stop. Breathe later. Behind them, pursuit. Men crashing through the forest. Harlan would have them spread out, sweep the area. They knew these mountains too, some of them anyway. Local men who hunted here, who knew the trails and hiding spots and all the places a person might run. Caleb led them north, away from ridgeline, deeper into the high country. The terrain got rougher, steeper, good for defense, bad for escape. Eventually they'd hit a canyon or a cliff or some natural barrier they couldn't cross. Then they'd have to make a stand. The question was whether the marshal would arrive before that happened. An hour passed. Maybe more. Hard to tell in the darkness. The pursuit had spread out. Caleb could hear them calling to each other, coordinating, closing the net, professional work. These weren't scared deputies. These were hunters who'd done this before. I need to rest, Fletcher gasped. Not yet. I'm going to die. Not if you keep moving. They reached a ravine. Steep walls, narrow bottom, a creek running through it, frozen over but the ice looked thin, treacherous. Caleb led them along the edge, looking for a way down, a way across, anything that would slow pursuit. Marina grabbed his arm. Listen. He stopped, listened, heard it. Horses. Coming from the east, moving fast, too fast for the terrain. Someone was taking risks, someone in a hurry. That's not Harlan's men, Marina said. How do you know? Because they'd be more careful. They're hunting. You don't hunt on horseback in this country. She was right. Caleb strained to hear, counted hoofbeats. 4 horses, maybe 5. Coming straight toward them. No deviation, no searching, like they knew exactly where to go. The marshal, Fletcher breathed. Has to be. Or more of Harlan's men from town. Either way, we need to know. Marina started back toward the sound. Wait! Caleb reached for her, but she was already moving, slipping between trees, silent despite everything. The girl had learned fast. Fear was a good teacher. He followed. Fletcher stayed behind, too exhausted to do anything but lean against a tree and try not to pass out. They got close enough to see. 5 riders. Coming down the trail Caleb had used 100 times. Leading them was a man in a long coat, federal badge visible even in the darkness. Behind him, 4 deputies, all armed, all looking serious. Marshal Clayton Ward. Caleb had met him once, 5 years ago. Ward had been tracking a fugitive through the mountains, stopped at Caleb's cabin for directions. They'd shared coffee and conversation, talked about the war, about what came after, about the kind of justice that existed in courtrooms versus the kind that existed in the wild. Ward had been honest about both, said sometimes you had to choose, sometimes the law wasn't enough. Now here he was, 4 hours after a telegraph message, leading men into a firefight against a railroad baron. Either he was brave or stupid or honest enough to be both. "Marshal," Caleb called out, stepped into view, hands where they could be seen. "Caleb Rourke, we met a few years back." Ward pulled up his horse, hand on his gun. "I remember. You're the hermit. That's me. And you're the one who sent the telegraph about Victor Harlan." That was Miss Bell. But yes. Ward looked past him, saw Marina emerging from the trees, saw the ledgers in her arms. "You have the evidence?" "All of it. Everything Thomas Harlan gave me. Everything my father documented before they killed him." Marina's voice was hoarse from smoke and exhaustion. "It's all here. Then we need to move. Where's Harlan now?" "Burned my cabin. Sent men into the forest to hunt us down. They're close, maybe 10 minutes behind." "How many?" 30, maybe more." Ward swore, looked at his deputies. "That's not good odds." "No, sir," one of them agreed. "Not even close." "We could run," another suggested. "Get the evidence back to Denver. File charges from there." "They'd never make it," Ward said. "Harlan's men know this country. They'd run us down before we got 5 miles. He looked at Caleb. "Is there defensible ground nearby?" "Canyon, half a mile north, narrow entrance, rock walls, hard to flank." "Show me." They moved as a group now. Caleb leading, Ward and his deputies following, Marina and Fletcher in the middle. Behind them, the sounds of pursuit getting closer. Voices, branches breaking, men who knew they were close to their prey. The canyon was exactly as Caleb remembered, 30 feet wide at the entrance, narrowing to maybe 10 feet at the far end, walls 20 feet high on both sides. A kill zone if you knew how to use it. "This'll work," Ward said. He was already deploying his men, 2 at the entrance with rifles, 2 on the walls where they could shoot down. "But we can't hold it forever. Eventually they'll figure out how to flank us, or they'll just wait us out." "How long until reinforcements?" Caleb asked. "I sent word before I left Denver, but it'll be noon at the earliest before anyone else arrives. 6 hours. In a canyon. Against 30 men who wanted them dead and had every reason to make it happen before federal law showed up in force." Caleb checked his ammunition. Down to 20 rounds, not enough for a sustained fight. Ward saw him counting. "We'll share what we have," the marshal said, "but go easy. We're all low." "What's the plan?" "Survive until noon. Keep the evidence safe. Arrest anyone who's still alive and stupid enough to surrender." Ward smiled, grim. "Think you can manage that?" "Ask me in 6 hours." The first attack came 15 minutes later. Not a full assault, just probing. 3 men at the canyon entrance, testing the defenses, seeing who was armed and how well they could shoot. Ward's deputies drove them back with rifle fire. Didn't kill anyone. Didn't need to. Just made the point that entering the canyon had cost. The second attack was smarter. 8 men, coordinated, coming from multiple angles, 2 from the front, 3 trying to climb the walls, 3 more providing covering fire. It was loud and violent and lasted maybe 90 seconds. When it was over, 2 of Harlan's men were wounded. One of Ward's deputies was bleeding from a shoulder wound. The canyon floor was littered with spent shells. "They're learning," Ward said. He was reloading, calm, professional. "Next time they'll commit more men. Try to overwhelm us. Can we hold? For a while, until we run out of ammunition or they get smart enough to use fire. Fire won't work in a stone canyon. No, but smoke will. Ward pointed up. They set fires at the entrance. The smoke will pour in. We'll have to choose between suffocating or running out into their guns. Caleb hadn't thought of that. Neither had Marina. She was sitting against the canyon wall, the ledgers beside her, her rifle across her lap. She looked exhausted, terrified, but still present, still fighting. We could give them up, Fletcher said. He was slumped nearby, pale, shaking. The ledgers, trade them for safe passage. No. Marina didn't even look at him. That's not happening. We're going to die here. Maybe, but at least we'll die knowing we tried. That's not comfort. It's not supposed to be. She met his eyes. My father tried. Thomas tried. They both died for this evidence, for the truth. I'm not throwing that away because I'm scared. Being scared is smart. Being scared is easy. Standing up is hard. She looked at Caleb. Right? Right, he said. Though privately he agreed with Fletcher. Dying for truth sounded noble until you were actually doing it. Then it just hurt. The third attack came at dawn. Full commitment. 20 men, all at once. Harlan had decided to end this. The deputies opened fire. Caleb joined them. Marina too. The canyon filled with noise, gun smoke, screaming, men falling. Some dead, some wounded, some just diving for cover. It was chaos. Pure chaos. Caleb fired until his revolver clicked empty. Reloaded. Fired again. Beside him, one of Ward's deputies took a bullet to the chest. Went down. Didn't get up. Another deputy was hit in the leg. Kept firing anyway. Teeth gritted against the pain. Marina's rifle jammed. She tried to clear it. Couldn't. A man made it to the canyon entrance, raised his gun, aimed at her. Caleb shot him. Center mass. The man collapsed. Then it stopped. The surviving attackers retreated, dragged their wounded with them, left their dead. The canyon went quiet except for the sound of people breathing hard and the wounded man crying for help nobody would give. Count off, Ward ordered. 3 deputies answered. The 4th was dead. The wounded one said he could still fight. Probably lying, but Ward didn't call him on it. Ammunition? Low across the board. Caleb had maybe 10 rounds left. The deputies weren't much better. Marina had given up on her jammed rifle, taken the revolver from the dead deputy. She held it like it might bite her. They'll come again, Ward said, soon. They can't afford to wait for reinforcements any more than we can. How many did we get? Caleb asked. 5 dead, maybe 8 wounded. That leaves them with maybe 15 fighting men. Still outnumber us 3-1. But they're hesitating now. That attack cost them. Won't matter if they get desperate. Ward looked at the sky. Sun was coming up, painting the canyon walls gold and red. 6 more hours. That's all we need. A voice from outside the canyon. Victor Harlan himself. Marshal Ward, I know you're in there. Ward moved to the entrance, stayed behind cover. I'm here. This doesn't have to continue. You're federal law. I respect that. So let's talk like civilized men. About what? Jurisdiction, authority, the nature of evidence. Harlan's voice was smooth, reasonable. The documents you're protecting were stolen from my property. That makes them inadmissible in any court. You know that. What I know is they document crimes, murder, bribery, fraud. Doesn't matter how I got them. Matters what's in them. Alleged crimes. Based on ledgers anyone could have fabricated. Where's your chain of custody, Marshal? Where's your proof these came from my office? I have a witness. Miss Bell will testify. Miss Bell is a thief and a liar. Her father tried to extort me before he died. She's continuing his work. You're being used, Marshal, manipulated by people who want to destroy me for their own gain. Ward laughed. That's creative, I'll give you that. It's the truth. And when this goes to trial, if it goes to trial, my lawyers will tear your case apart. You'll have nothing, worse than nothing. You'll have wasted federal resources on a vendetta. Then you've got nothing to worry about. Let us leave. Take the evidence to Denver. Let a jury decide. Silence. Harlan was thinking, calculating, trying to find an angle that didn't end with him in prison or dead. I'm willing to make a deal, he said finally. The girl goes free. You keep the ledgers. But Rourke stays. He murdered one of my men, assaulted my sheriff, destroyed my property. He answers for that. Caleb felt everyone looking at him. Ward, Marina, the deputies, Fletcher, all waiting to see what he'd say. No, Marina said before he could answer. No deals. We all go or none of us do. Miss Bell, be reasonable. I said no. She stood up, walked to the canyon entrance, showed herself. Harlan was 50 yards away, surrounded by his remaining men. He looked tired, older than he had the night before, like the weight of everything was finally catching up. You can't win this, Harlan told her. Even if you survive today, even if you get to Denver, I have resources you can't imagine. Lawyers, politicians, judges. I'll tie this up in courts for years, decades. You'll spend your whole life fighting me, and you'll die before you see any justice. Maybe, Marina said. But you'll spend that whole time looking over your shoulder, wondering when the next witness comes forward, when the next ledger appears, when someone you trust decides the price of their soul is higher than what you're paying. She held up the ledgers. This is just the beginning. You know that. Thomas knew where all the bodies were buried. He told me. And before he died, he told others. People who worked for you. People who knew what you were. You think you can kill all of us? Harlan's expression darkened. I can try. Then try. Marina didn't move, didn't flinch. But know that every person you kill makes the truth bigger, heavier, harder to bury. My father's death made me fight. Thomas's death gave me proof. What do you think yours will do? Are you threatening me? I'm promising you, this doesn't end until you pay for what you've done, one way or another. Harlan stared at her, at this young woman who should have been his daughter-in-law, who should have been grateful for his mercy, who instead had become the thing he feared most, someone who wouldn't be bought or scared or killed into silence. Burn them out, he said to his men, all of them. I don't care about the ledgers anymore. Just make sure none of them leave this canyon alive. The men moved to obey, started gathering brush, deadfall, anything that would burn. They were going to smoke them out, just like Ward had predicted. Get back, Ward ordered Marina. She retreated into the canyon. Ward looked at his deputies, at Caleb. This is it. When the smoke starts, we have maybe 5 minutes before we can't breathe. We go out fighting or we suffocate. Your choice. Some choice, Fletcher muttered. It's the only one we've got. Ward checked his rifle. 4 rounds left. Make them count. Harlan's men were piling brush at the canyon entrance, building a pyre. One of them had a torch, lit it, prepared to set everything ablaze. Then a shot rang out, not from the canyon, from behind Harlan's position. The man with the torch dropped it, grabbed his arm. The torch fell into the brush, started a fire nobody had intended. More shots, from the trees, from multiple positions. Harlan's men scattered, confused, under attack from an unexpected direction. 3 of them went down in the first volley. The rest dove for cover, returned fire blindly. What the? Ward moved to where he could see. Who's shooting? Caleb looked, saw figures emerging from the forest, 12 of them, maybe more. Not soldiers, not deputies, townspeople, miners, shopkeepers, people from Ridgeline armed with hunting rifles and shotguns and whatever else they could find. Leading them was Ruth Kimball, the woman from the general store. She worked her rifle bolt, fired again, hit one of Harlan's men in the leg. Thought you could use some help, she called toward the canyon. Ward stared. Who are you people? Citizens, Ruth said. Tired of watching Victor Harlan run our town like his personal kingdom. Tired of watching good people die for his profit. Figured it was time someone did something about it. This is insanity, Harlan shouted. He was pinned down behind a rock, his empire crumbling around him. You're all under arrest, assaulting federal officers, interfering with We're helping federal officers, Ruth corrected. Big difference. She fired again. You're the one under arrest, Victor, for murder, for theft, for every crime in those ledgers. Now you can come peaceful, or we can do this the hard way. Harlan looked at his men, at the people surrounding him, at the canyon where Marina stood holding the evidence of his guilt, at the sun rising over the mountains, painting everything in harsh light, nowhere left to hide. He reached for his gun. 3 shots hit him. Ruth, Ward, Marina, all 3 firing at once. Harlan went down, Didn't move, blood spreading in the snow around him. The most powerful man in the territory, dead in the dirt like anyone else. His men looked at each other, at their dead boss, at the guns pointed at them from every direction. One by one they raised their hands, surrendered, the fight was over. Marshal Ward emerged from the canyon, surveyed the scene, the dead, the wounded, the townspeople who'd risked everything to do the right thing. "That was the stupidest thing I've ever seen," he said to Ruth. "Probably." She lowered her rifle. "But it worked." "How did you even know we were here?" "Followed the smoke from the cabin. Figured you'd need help." Ruth looked at Marina. "Your father was a good man. Deserved better than what Harlan gave him. We all knew it. Just took someone brave enough to make us remember." Marina couldn't speak, just nodded, tears running down her face, relief and grief and exhaustion all mixed together. Caleb walked out of the canyon, his legs barely holding him up. Every part of him hurt. He'd been shot at, burned out of his home, hunted through the mountains, and somehow he was still alive. "You all right?" Ward asked. "Define all right." "Breathing, conscious, not bleeding too much." "Then, yeah, I'm all right." Caleb looked at the ledgers Marina was still clutching. "Evidence secure? Looks like it. We'll get it to Denver, file formal charges, start building the case." Ward paused. "You know there's going to be more of them. Harlan's organization doesn't die just because he did. Men he bribed, operations he ran. Might take years to clean it all up. That's your job, not mine. Could use someone who knows the territory, someone who's good in a fight. Federal deputy position pays decent." Caleb laughed. "I'm done fighting. I just want to rebuild my cabin and be left alone." "Alone? Really?" Ward looked at Marina. She was watching Caleb with those storm gray eyes. "Doesn't look like alone to me." Caleb didn't have an answer for that, so he just walked over to Marina, took the ledgers from her arms. They were heavy. Heavier than they should be, the weight of every life they represented, every crime, every victim, every person who'd died trying to expose the truth. "We did it," Marina said quietly. "You did it. Your father started it. You finished it. Thomas helped. Ruth helped. You helped." She looked at him. "I couldn't have done this alone. You wouldn't have had to if I'd just left you at that station. Then I'm glad you didn't." She smiled, tired, genuine. First real smile he'd seen from her. "What happens now?" "Now, we give testimony. We watch them build the case. We make sure every name in these ledgers answers for what they did. And after?" Caleb thought about his burned cabin, about 15 years of solitude, about choosing to help a stranger and how that choice had led to this moment, standing in a canyon at sunrise, surrounded by the dead and the living, holding evidence that would change the territory, with a woman who'd refused to quit even when quitting was the smart choice. "After," he said slowly, "I guess we figure it out as we go." Marina nodded. "I can work with that." They walked out of the canyon together. Behind them, Ward's deputies were rounding up prisoners. Ruth and the townspeople were tending to wounded. Fletcher was sitting against a rock, looking shocked that he'd survived. The sun was fully up now, cold and bright. A new day despite everything. Caleb had lost his cabin, his solitude, his simple life where the only thing that mattered was making it through winter. But somehow, standing there with Marina beside him and the evidence safe and Victor Harlan dead in the snow, he didn't mind as much as he thought he would. Some fights were worth it. Some things mattered more than being left alone. He was starting to think maybe this was one of them. The trip to Denver took 3 days. Marshal Ward insisted on an armed escort, 8 deputies, all carrying rifles, riding in formation like they were transporting the crown jewels instead of 3 leather-bound ledgers. Maybe they were, in a way. Those books represented more wealth and power than most people would see in 10 lifetimes. The difference was this wealth had been stolen, and this power had been built on graves. Marina rode in silence most of the first day. She sat in the wagon beside the strongbox containing the evidence, one hand resting on it like she was afraid it might disappear if she looked away. Caleb rode alongside on a borrowed horse. Rust was still somewhere in the mountains, probably wondering where his owner had gone. The animal beneath him now was younger, skittish, not used to mountain work. It reminded him that nothing stayed the same. Not horses, not cabins, not the life you thought you'd built. She hasn't said 10 words since we left, Ward observed. He'd pulled his horse even with Caleb's. That normal for her? I don't know her well enough to say what's normal. But you trust her. I trust she wants justice for her father. That's enough. Ward was quiet for a moment. Then, the territorial governor is going to fight this. So are half the judges. Harlan had his fingers in everything. When we start pulling threads, the whole system might unravel. Good. Maybe it needs to. That's easy to say when you don't have to rebuild it. Ward adjusted his hat against the sun. I've been doing this work 20 years. You know what I've learned? Corruption is like rotten timber. You can cut out the bad parts, sure. But sometimes the rot goes so deep there's nothing left to save. You end up tearing down the whole structure. Then you build something new. With what? The same people who let it rot in the first place? Ward shook his head. I admire your optimism. But I've seen too many cases like this. We'll arrest some people, maybe even convict a few. But the big fish, the politicians, the businessmen, the ones who actually profited, they'll slip away. Hire expensive lawyers, delay the trials. Eventually people forget, move on. And 5 years from now, it'll be someone else doing the same things Harlan did. Different name, same crime. You always this cheerful? I'm realistic. There's a difference. Caleb looked at Marina in the wagon. She was staring at nothing, face blank. He wondered what she was thinking, whether she was replaying the moment she pulled the trigger on Harlan, whether she regretted it, whether she wished things had gone differently. She killed a man, Caleb said quietly. Yesterday morning, first time probably. That changes a person. You regret getting her involved? I didn't get her involved. She was already involved the moment her father started keeping records. I just kept her alive long enough to finish what he started. That's not nothing. It's not enough either. Caleb shifted in the saddle. His ribs still hurt where Crowley had hit him. His ankle was swollen from the jump through the window. Every part of him ached. We won the fight. Doesn't mean we won the war. Wars are won by people who don't quit, Ward said. Right now, you've got evidence. You've got witnesses. You've got a dead railroad baron who can't pay anyone off or threaten anyone into silence. That's more than most people get. What you do with it, that's up to you. They made camp that night near a creek. The deputies set up a perimeter. Fletcher started a fire. Marina helped unload supplies from the wagon, moving mechanically like her mind was somewhere else. Caleb watched her work, noticed the way she avoided looking at anyone, the way her hands shook when she thought no one was paying attention. He waited until after dinner, until most of the camp had settled down. Then he walked over to where she sat alone, staring into the fire. You all right? She didn't look up. Everyone keeps asking me that. Because you haven't answered. I'm fine. You're lying. Marina finally looked at him. Her eyes were red. Not from crying, from exhaustion that went deeper than missing sleep. What do you want me to say? That I'm celebrating? That I'm happy Harlan's dead? I'm not. I'm not anything. I'm just empty. Caleb sat down beside her, close enough to talk, far enough to give her space. You did what needed doing. That's supposed to make it better? No. It's supposed to be the truth. The truth is I killed someone. The truth is I pointed a gun at another human being and pulled the trigger and watched him die. And you know what the worst part is? Her voice cracked. I'm not even sorry. I should be. Normal people feel remorse. They have nightmares. They question themselves. But me? I look at what happened and all I feel is relief. That he can't hurt anyone else. That he can't take anything more from my family. And that makes me wonder what kind of person I am. The kind who survived. The kind who fought back. Or the kind who's just as bad as he was. You're nothing like him, Caleb said it with certainty. Harlan killed for profit, for power. You killed to protect yourself and everyone he'd hurt. There's a difference. Is there? Or is that just what we tell ourselves to sleep at night? Caleb thought about the man he'd killed 15 years ago, the one who'd hurt someone he cared about. He'd had this same conversation with himself, asked the same questions, wondered if justice and revenge were really different things or just different words for the same impulse. I don't know, he said honestly. Maybe there's not as much difference as we'd like. Maybe killing someone changes you no matter why you did it. But I do know this. You didn't want this. You didn't seek it out. You just refused to let someone destroy you. That counts for something. Does it? Has to. Otherwise, none of it means anything. Marina pulled her knees up to her chest, rested her chin on them, looked like a child despite everything she'd been through. My mother doesn't know yet about any of this. She thinks I'm at the wedding, thinks I'm married to Thomas, safe, provided for. When she finds out what really happened, she'll understand. Will she? Her husband is dead. Her daughter ran away and started a war. And for what? Justice? Revenge? A ledger full of crimes that might not even matter? Marina's voice went hollow. My father died for this. Thomas died. People in that canyon died. And we still don't know if it'll be enough, if any court will care, if anyone will actually pay. They will. You don't know that? No, but I believe it. And sometimes belief is enough to keep going. They sat in silence. The fire crackled. Somewhere an owl called. The deputies talked quietly among themselves. Normal sounds, normal night, like the world hadn't just been torn apart and put back together wrong. What happens after? Marina asked. After the trial, after everything's settled, what do I do? Whatever you want. That's not helpful. It's true, though. You're not bound anymore. Not to Harlan, not to debts, not to anyone's expectations. You get to choose. I don't know how. Nobody does at first. You just start walking and see where you end up. Marina looked at him. Is that what you did? After you killed that man? Just started walking? More or less. Ended up on a mountain, built a cabin, lived alone for 15 years. And now? Now the cabin's burned and I'm headed to Denver to testify in a trial that might take years. He smiled slightly. Turns out you can't plan life. It just happens. That's terrifying. Yeah, but it's also kind of freeing. They reached Denver on the afternoon of the third day. The city was bigger than Ridgeline, louder. More people in one street than lived in the entire mountain territory. Marina stared at everything. The buildings, the carriages, the women in fancy dresses and men in suits. A world so far removed from blood-stained wedding dresses and cabins burning in the night. Marshal Ward took them directly to the federal courthouse, a stone building that looked like it was trying to intimidate people into honesty. Inside, they met with a prosecutor, a thin man with glasses who looked at the ledgers like they were written in a foreign language. This is going to be complicated, he said, after an hour of reading. The evidence is good, better than good, but Harlan's estate will fight every charge. They'll claim the ledgers are forgeries, that the testimony is unreliable, that this is all a conspiracy by business rivals. Can they win? Marina asked. They can delay, maybe for years. And in the meantime, everyone Harlan paid off will be scrambling to cover their tracks, destroying evidence, intimidating witnesses, making sure nothing connects them to the crimes. So we did all this for nothing. I didn't say that. The prosecutor closed the ledger. I said it'll be complicated, not impossible. We have documentation, we have witnesses, we have a dead man who can't buy his way out of consequences. It'll take time, it'll be ugly. But if you're willing to testify, I am, Marina said immediately. Then we have a chance. The trial didn't start for 6 months. 6 months of depositions and investigations and lawyers arguing over every detail. 6 months of Marina living in Denver, staying in a boarding house, giving statement after statement to prosecutors who asked the same questions different ways. Caleb stayed too. He'd planned to leave. Go back to the mountains. Find Rust. Build another cabin somewhere even more remote. But Ward offered him that deputy position again, said he could use someone who understood how corruption worked from the inside, someone who wasn't afraid to get his hands dirty when the law wasn't enough. He took it, not because he wanted to, because Marina needed someone who understood what she'd been through, someone who wouldn't ask her to pretend everything was fine when it wasn't. They saw each other most evenings, met at a restaurant near the courthouse, ate dinner and talked about the case, about the lawyers, about the people Harlan had paid off who were now testifying against each other to save themselves. Sometimes they talked about other things. Her father, his cabin, the life they'd both lost and couldn't get back. Ruth wrote me, Marina said one night. It was 8 months after the canyon. The trial had finally started. She says Ridgeline is different now. People are speaking up, reporting problems, refusing bribes, like everyone woke up and remembered they had spines. People are brave when the thing they're afraid of is dead. That's cynical. Doesn't make it wrong. Marina pushed food around her plate. She'd lost weight. stress and testimony, and reliving her father's death every time a lawyer asked about it. The defense is calling me a liar. Did you hear? Said I fabricated the ledgers with Thomas, that we were planning to extort his father and it went wrong. Nobody believes that. Some people do. I can see it in their faces, the jury, the spectators. They look at me and see a gold digger who got a man killed. The jury's job is to look at evidence, not make moral judgments about you. Juries are people. People make judgments. She wasn't wrong. Caleb had testified the week before. Spent 2 days being cross-examined by lawyers who implied he was a violent criminal, a hermit who'd murdered a man and fled to the mountains, who'd manipulated a vulnerable young woman into helping him destroy a respected businessman. They made him sound like the villain, made Harlan sound like the victim. The prosecutor was good, though. Brought in witnesses, workers who'd survived tunnel collapses, families who'd lost fathers and sons to accidents that were really murders, inspectors who admitted they'd been paid to ignore safety violations. Each testimony added weight to the ledgers, made them real. Sheriff Crowley testified too. Given immunity in exchange for cooperation, he confirmed everything, every bribe, every cover-up, every time Harlan had ordered him to make a problem disappear. His testimony was damning, but it came at a cost. He walked free while others paid for crimes he'd helped commit. That's how the system works, Ward explained when Caleb complained about it. You give the small fish immunity to catch the big ones. It's not fair, but it's effective. Fairness should matter. It should, but it doesn't always. The trial lasted 4 months. 4 months of testimony and evidence and lawyers arguing about interpretation and intent. 4 months of Marina sitting in the courtroom every day, watching the men who'd worked for her father's killer try to excuse themselves, try to pretend they hadn't known, hadn't participated, hadn't profited. The verdict came on a cold morning in March, almost a year and a half after Marina had run from her wedding. The jury deliberated for 3 days. When they came back, the foreman read the charges: guilty on all counts, conspiracy, fraud, murder, bribery, every crime documented in Marcus Bell's ledgers. The courtroom erupted, shouting, crying, people celebrating or protesting depending on which side they were on. Marina sat still, didn't react, just stared at the judge as he thanked the jury and set a sentencing date. Outside, reporters swarmed them, asking questions, taking photographs. Marina ignored them all, walked past like they weren't there. Caleb followed, made sure she got to the boarding house without being harassed. "You all right?" he asked when they were alone. "Everyone keeps asking me that." "Because you never answer." She laughed, bitter, exhausted. "I don't know how to feel. My father is still dead. Thomas is still dead. All those workers still dead. A guilty verdict doesn't bring them back, doesn't undo what happened." "No, but it means something." "Does it?" "It means the truth mattered more than money. That's rare. You should feel something about that." Marina sat down on her bed, looked at her hands. They were steady now. No more shaking, no more fear, just tired. "I thought I'd feel relief or satisfaction, something. But all I feel is empty, like I spent everything I had getting here and there's nothing left." Caleb sat beside her. "That's normal. You've been fighting for almost 2 years. Your whole life has been this trial. Now it's over. You have to figure out what comes next." "I don't know what that is." "Then we'll figure it out together." She looked at him. "Why are you still here? You could have left months ago. Gone back to your mountains. Built your cabin. But you stayed. Someone had to make sure you ate. You're terrible at remembering to feed yourself." "I'm serious." "So am I." He hesitated, then, "I stayed because leaving felt wrong, like abandoning something unfinished. The trial's finished." "I'm not talking about the trial." Marina studied his face. "What are you talking about?" Caleb had spent 15 years alone, 15 years telling himself he didn't need people. That solitude was simpler, safer, better. But sitting here now in a boarding house room with a woman who'd survived something most people wouldn't, he realized he'd been lying to himself. "I'm talking about this," he said. "You and me. Whatever this is. I don't have a name for it. Don't know what it means. But I know I'm not ready to walk away from it. You want to stay? In Denver?" "I want to stay wherever you are. If you'll have me." Marina's eyes filled with tears. First time he'd seen her cry since the canyon. I don't know how to do this. How to be normal. How to live a life that isn't running or fighting or testifying. Then we'll learn together. Make mistakes. Figure it out as we go. That's a terrible plan. It's the only one I've got. She laughed through her tears. You keep saying that. Because it keeps being true. They sat there until the sun set, until the room went dark and the city outside quieted down, until the weight of everything they'd survived felt a little lighter. Not gone. Never gone. But manageable. Something they could carry together instead of alone. The sentencing happened 2 weeks later. Victor Harlan's estate was ordered to pay restitution to every family affected by his crimes. Millions of dollars. His company was broken up, sold off in pieces. The Colorado Central Railroad was reorganized under federal oversight. New safety standards, real inspections, consequences for violations. Sheriff Crowley lost his badge. So did 3 other lawmen. 2 judges were removed from the bench. A territorial senator resigned. The corruption that Harlan had built over decades came crashing down. Not all at once, not completely, but enough that people noticed, enough that things started to change. Ruth sent a letter, said Ridgeline had elected a new sheriff, a former miner who'd lost his brother in one of Harlan's tunnels. Said the town was talking about building a memorial, a stone monument listing everyone who'd died because of corporate greed. Marcus Bell's name would be first. Marina cried when she read it. Then she wrote back, told Ruth she'd be there for the dedication, that she wanted to see her mother, make peace with the past, start building something new. You should come, she told Caleb. To Ridgeline? To see the memorial. To show people that standing up to corruption works, that justice is possible. I'm not a symbol. I'm just a guy who helped someone who needed it. That's exactly why you should come. Because you don't see yourself as special. You just did what was right. She folded the letter. People need to see that ordinary people can make a difference. That you don't have to be perfect or fearless or anything other than stubborn enough to not quit. They went to Ridgeline in June, almost 2 years after Marina had stood on that platform in a blood-stained wedding dress. The town looked different, cleaner, brighter, like someone had scrubbed away years of grime and fear. The memorial stood in the town square, a simple stone obelisk, 23 names carved into it, 23 people who'd died so Victor Harlan could save money on safety equipment. Marcus Bell's name was at the top. Below it, a plaque. They spoke truth when silence was easier. They fought corruption when surrender was safer. We remember. Marina stood in front of it for a long time. Didn't say anything. Just stood there with her hand on her father's name. Caleb stood beside her, quiet, respectful, letting her have this moment. Her mother was there too, older, frailer. The heart condition had worsened, but she was alive. She hugged Marina for a solid minute, crying, saying she was sorry, that she should have believed, should have fought, should have done something. You survived, Marina told her. That's enough. That's more than enough. Ruth had organized everything. The dedication, the speeches, the gathering afterward where people told stories about the ones they'd lost. It was sad and hopeful at the same time. A town mourning its dead while celebrating that their deaths hadn't been in vain. Your father would be proud, Ruth told Marina, of you, of what you did, of what you've become. I'm not anything special. That's where you're wrong. You're exactly what this territory needed. Someone who wouldn't be bought or scared into silence. Someone who saw what was wrong and fixed it. I didn't fix anything. I just exposed what was already broken. Sometimes that's the same thing. That night, after the ceremony, Caleb and Marina walked to the edge of town, to the spot where the old relay station still stood. Empty now. No one needed it anymore. The telegraph line had been rerouted. Progress moving on. This is where it started, Marina said, where we sent that message to Denver, where everything changed. A lot of things changed before that. True. But this is where we went from running to fighting back. Caleb looked at the mountains, at the high country where his cabin used to be. He'd gone back once, seen the burned remains, the charred logs, the collapsed roof. It had hurt less than he expected, maybe because he'd already let it go, already accepted that some things don't survive, that sometimes you have to burn down what was to build what could be. I'm going back up there, he said, to rebuild. Not the same cabin, something different, better. Alone? I was hoping not. He looked at her. I know you've got your mother, your life here, whatever you're building. But if you wanted, if you were interested, there's room. For two. Marina smiled. You're asking me to live in a cabin in the mountains with a hermit. Former hermit. I'm reformed. Are you? Working on it. She took his hand, laced their fingers together. I think I'd like that. The mountains. The quiet. A place where nobody's asking me to relive the worst days of my life. Where I can just be. It won't be easy. Winters are hard, summers aren't much better, and you'll be stuck with me. I'm not great at conversation. I've noticed, but I'm willing to risk it. They stood there watching the sunset behind the mountains. Two people who'd survived something most wouldn't, who'd fought an empire and won, who'd learned that justice was possible but never easy, that doing the right thing cost more than most people wanted to pay, but that sometimes, not always, but sometimes, it was worth it. The cabin Caleb built was bigger than the first one. 2 rooms, a real stove, windows that actually opened. Marina helped with the construction. Turned out she was good with her hands, good at solving problems, good at building things that lasted. They spent that summer working, that fall preparing for winter, that winter just surviving. It was hard, harder than Marina expected, easier than Caleb feared. They fought sometimes about small things, about who left the door open or forgot to split kindling or said something the wrong way. Normal fights, the kind people have when they're learning to live together. Spring came. The snow melted. The mountains turned green. Marina planted a garden. Vegetables and flowers mixed together. Said she wanted something beautiful to look at, something that grew instead of died. Marshal Ward visited in summer, brought news from Denver. More arrests, more trials. The corruption that Harlan had built was still being dismantled, piece by piece. Year by year, it would take time, maybe decades. But it was happening. People are calling you a hero, Ward told Marina. I'm not. Tell that to the families of the workers who don't have to worry about unsafe conditions anymore. To the towns that are finally getting honest representation. To everyone who's benefiting from what you did. I just did what my father started. And that's why you're a hero. Because you finished it. Because you didn't quit when quitting would have been easier. After Ward left, Caleb found Marina sitting on the porch, looking at the mountains, thinking. You all right? He asked. She smiled. Yeah, I actually am. Good. You know what I realized? This whole time, the trial, the testimony, all of it, I was waiting to feel like it was over, like I could close that chapter and move on. But it's never going to be over, not completely. My father is still dead. Thomas is still dead. Nothing changes that. No. But you made sure they didn't die for nothing. Maybe, or maybe I'm just telling myself that to feel better. She stood, stretched. Either way, I'm done carrying it alone. It's in the past. I can't change it. Can't fix it. All I can do is keep living, keep building, keep trying to be better than what came before. That's all any of us can do. Is it enough? Caleb thought about that. About 15 years of hiding, about choosing to help a stranger, about everything that came after, the fighting and running and testimony and rebuilding, about standing here now with someone who understood what it meant to survive something that should have broken you. Yeah, he said, I think it is. Years passed. The territory changed. New leadership, new laws, new opportunities for people who'd been crushed under the old system. Ridgeline thrived. Other towns did too. The memorial in the town square became a place people visited, a reminder that ordinary people could stand up to corruption, that justice, however delayed, was possible. Marina's mother passed away peacefully 3 years after the trial. Heart gave out in her sleep. Marina grieved, but not like before. This was natural, expected, the kind of loss everyone faces eventually. She buried her mother next to her father, gave them matching headstones, together in death like they should have been in life. Ruth ran for mayor of Ridgeline, won easily, served 2 terms, used her position to make sure what happened with Harlan never happened again. Transparency. Accountability. Consequences for those who abused power. She wrote to Marina regularly. Updates on the town, on the people, on all the small ways things were getting better. Fletcher went back to running the relay station, then retired when the telegraph company replaced him with someone younger. He moved to Denver, opened a bookstore, said he'd had enough adventure for one lifetime. But sometimes he'd tell the story to customers about the night he helped two fugitives send a message that brought down an empire. Each telling the story got bigger, more dramatic. Eventually it barely resembled what actually happened, but Caleb didn't mind. People needed heroes, needed to believe that standing up mattered. Caleb and Marina's cabin became a place people visited. Not many, just occasional travelers who'd heard the story, who wanted to see where the hermit and the runaway bride had rebuilt their lives. They were always polite, respectful, asked questions about the trial, about how Marina had survived, about what it was like to fight corruption and win. Marina answered honestly, said it was terrifying, said there were days she wanted to quit, days she thought she'd die, days she wasn't sure any of it mattered, but that she kept going because the alternative was letting bad people win, and she couldn't live with that. Some visitors left inspired, some left uncomfortable, some just left. Caleb figured that was how it went. Truth wasn't comfortable. It demanded things from people, asked them to look at their own lives and decide whether they'd stand up when it mattered or look away when it was easier. On quiet nights, when it was just the two of them, Marina would sometimes ask if he regretted it, helping her, losing his cabin, getting dragged into a war he didn't start. No, Caleb would say, and mean it, because the truth was that 15 years alone had been easier, but not better. Safety wasn't the same as living, and living, really living, meant taking risks, opening yourself up to people even when they could hurt you, fighting for things even when you might lose. He'd lost his cabin, his solitude, his simple life, but he'd gained something better, a partner, a purpose, proof that choosing to help someone could matter, that small actions had consequences, that refusing to look away when you saw something wrong could change the world. Not all at once, not perfectly, but change nonetheless. The memorial and ridgeline gained more names over the years, not victims of Harlan's greed, but people who'd stood up to other corruption, other injustice, people who'd seen Marina's story and decided they could do the same, could speak truth, could fight back, could refuse to accept that this was just how things were. Marcus Bell's name stayed at the top. A reminder of where it started, a surveyor who'd kept records, who'd documented crimes, who died trying to expose the truth. His daughter had finished what he started, and in doing so, she'd shown others that finishing was possible, that truth mattered, that justice, however difficult, was worth fighting for, that even the harshest winter could end in a new beginning. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes, that beginning was better than what came before.